All politics is identity politics. Hey guys, Kevin Deanna here, doing a special live stream for Identity Politics. And I'm doing this today because they killed Charlie Kirk today. Charlie Kirk was just 31 years old, married father of two, Christian by all accounts, a solid guy personally. I've had a lot of people who knew him reaching out to me over the last few hours, and they had nothing but good things to say. And it's important to recognize that the reason this happened is because he was hardly some radical. I think the only articles I ever wrote about them were hostile, basically saying he didn't go far enough and that he was gatekeeping and that he was part of Conservatism Inc. And I really regret these things now. I know one thing, I know organizing conservatives on college campuses, and he was a generational talent. TPUSA went from absolutely nothing to the predominant force on the campus right in a remarkably short amount of time, and it was entirely because of him. This was not just some guy. This was an extraordinary personality and organizer with a really bright future. Now, if you're watching this, you probably consider yourself to be on the hard right like I do. People who are a bit more moderate, though, are not our enemies. We shouldn't think of them as our enemies. But that's not even really the point, because in the last few months, he took extremely strong stances on immigration, crime, even the Civil Rights Act. Do you have any idea how big a deal it is for somebody in the conservatism movement to say we need to get rid of the Civil Rights Act? That is far tougher than just about any conservative is willing to do under his own name until very recently. He had a lot to lose. But he was also always within the conservative mainstream. He was always a civic nationalist. He never spoke in terms of the white race or saving the West for the white people or anything like that. There's nothing he ever did or said that was shocking or would fit any meaningful definition of the far right. He didn't tell insensitive jokes in a streaming culture practically defined by shock and conflict. He always carried himself like he was at a campus debate. And the fact that he put himself out there over and over again took incredible guts. Now, there are certain people, especially on the right, who get off on being hated, on notoriety, on being infamous just for infamy's sake. Kirk wasn't like that. You could see it in the way he carried himself. Even in those owning the libtard type debates, he didn't play to the camera. He didn't just try to drop a canned line and then leave. He wasn't the greatest debater of all time, but he always seemed to be sincerely engaging with whoever his interlocutor was. The whole point of Charlie Kirk was that he would talk to anyone. Debate me. Prove me wrong. It was a meme. He was doing what they tell us in democracy, in higher education, in America, that these things, this is what it's all about. It's about peacefully discussing our ideas in the marketplace. We talk it out. We debate. We come to a conclusion. And he was not some radical. Until very recently, very few of us on the hard right thought Charlie Kirk was even on our side in some way. He wasn't some vanguard. He wasn't some stalwart. Turning Point USA was the moderate group. It was the group you wanted to push farther. It was the group people would sometimes joke about, the Milquetoast group, the Conservatism Inc. group, socialism sucks signs and all that. And yet, that was too much for them. That was too much for them. He went out and told the leftists, debate me, and they killed him for it. One of the things I've been hammering away on here is you don't get to opt out. You don't get to say, well, I'm not part of this. Yeah, it really is right versus left. You don't get to pick your side necessarily. Your side is chosen for you. You aren't in power. And so in some sense, your tribe is pushed on you. You are in many respects what your enemies say you are. And yeah, Charlie Kirk was on our side. Why do I say that? Well, what is the left now? Especially on campus. And if there's one thing I know, it's the campus left. It is and has been, our entire lifetimes, defined by the hatred of Western civilization, which is, in its essence, the creation of white people. The left is anti-white. The left is defined by being anti-white. And if you dissent against that, you are going to be called racist. You are going to be called Islamophobic. You are going to be called sexist. You are going to be called transphobic or whatever the other phobias they come up with. What other national group existed on just about every campus in an organized, systemic fashion that college students on the right could join? There was just TPUSA. And if people say, oh, well, they didn't go far enough, and I said things like that, how do you think people become educated? How do you think people become radicalized? You have to go out there. You have to confront leftists. You actually have to do things. And TPUSA provided that. I want people on my side who are capable of doing at least some real-world politics, of operating in the real world as part of an organization, of dealing with normal people. And that organization provided that. And Charlie Kirk did that. And he did what I think is probably the single hardest thing to do, especially in recent years, especially in recent days. He was pushing the debate forward while remaining engaged with those people in the government who were on his side, most notably the President of the United States, Donald Trump. That is not an easy thing to do. And if you say, well, that's not enough, well, what exactly is the plan here? How exactly do we get to victory? We're just going to have no sympathizers in the government? We're just going to be a culture of critique and complain the whole time? What revolutionary movement has ever won that way? We're just not going to engage with the most right-wing government in our lifetimes? We're just going to complain online until, of course, we get banned from being online, and then we just march off on the gulag together? But we have our purity. We can tell ourselves that we were consistent in our beliefs. I want to win. And to win, we are going to need state power. And to get state power, we need to engage with the state in the ways that we can. And TPUSA did that. Now, I am very sympathetic to the idea of pressuring TPUSA from the right, but the idea that Charlie Kirk, in recent months, in recent days, in the days before he died, in the days before they killed him, the idea that he did not take strong stands on a lot of these issues is just wrong. He challenged Martin Luther King in the Civil Rights Act. He posted in January, "Who was MLK? A myth has been created and it has grown totally out of control. While he was alive, most people disliked him. Yet today he is the most honored, worshipped, even deified person of the 20th century. Today we are going to tell the truth and explain how this myth was born." Do you have any idea what a radical break that is with the way you're brought up in the conservative movement, where you're told that Martin Luther King Jr. was a conservative hero? This was unheard of even 3 years ago. And I guarantee he had a lot of donors screaming at him about it. H-1B visas. Yeah, we all know he said a lot of bad stuff on H-1B visas in the past. But what did he say recently? What did he say just a few days ago? America does not need more visas for people from India. Perhaps no form of legal immigration has so displaced American workers as those from India. Enough already. We're full. Let's finally put our own people first. And, by the way, there are Indians right now on X, take a look, mocking him, saying he was anti-India and therefore he deserved to die. Tell me who a man's enemies are and I'll tell you who he is. On crime and immigration, he spent the last few days defending ICE, defending the law enforcement surges into the big cities, but most important of all, on the issue that until today we were all thinking about, he was extremely solid. Following the butchery of Irina Zatuska in Charlotte, Charlie Kirk said, quote, "If we want things to change, it is 100% necessary to politicize the senseless murder of Irina Zatuska because it was politics that allowed a savage monster with 14 priors to be free on the streets to kill her." And after the video was released, he said, "America will never be the same." Well, after today, America will never be the same. He pushed back against Van Jones, who claimed this had nothing to do with race. He went after Black Lives Matter for justifying violence against whites. He has been remarkably good and remarkably courageous on opposing anti-white hatred lately. And if you don't believe me, believe my boss, Jared Taylor, who said today, "A terrible black day for America. Charlie Kirk was a mighty force for the truth. No one can replace him." Maybe that's not enough, but judge a man by the enemies he made. Again, Jared Taylor was complaining today, MSNBC is practically justifying his murder.
Talk to me about the environment in which a shooting like this happens.
Yeah, and again, I emphasize what you just emphasized. We don't know any of the full details of this. We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this. But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
practically justifying what happened to him. The body isn't even cold, but they're calling him divisive and polarizing. And of course, easily the best part of this, the shooting, they claimed, may have been one of Kirk's own supporters shooting a gun in celebration. Possibly the stupidest thing that's ever been said on live television.
Yeah, and again, I emphasize what you just emphasized. We don't know any of the full details of this. That we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about.
Destiny said, oh, you all know the streamer Destiny, a literal cocksucker. Destiny said, anyone who condemns this shooting is weak and a cuck.
Anybody on the left that does any sort of disavowal, whatever bullshit, I think is cucked and weak. I saw Newsom doing it earlier.
The Associated Press, they were reporting on the death of Charlie Kirk. What did they say? He lashed out at critical theory. He lashed out at critical race theory. He mocked George Floyd. He had it coming. J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois. Who is responsible for political violence? Well, it's January 6th. It's Donald Trump.
My sympathy to Charlie Kirk's family and to Charlie Kirk, who obviously has, become a target for somebody. I don't know whether it's political violence because I don't know who did it. I know they seem to have somebody in custody. But I will say that political violence, unfortunately, has been ratcheting up in this country. We saw the shootings, the killings in Minnesota. We've seen other political violence occur in other states. And I would just say it's got to stop. And I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it. We've seen the January 6th rioters who clearly, have tripped a new era of political violence.
Elizabeth Warren, she gets interviewed. What does she think about this? Well, Donald Trump raised the temperature. AOC, what does she think about this? Oh, well, actually, we need more gun control. Some people are saying don't watch the video of the assassination. I disagree. You actually need to watch it. Sam Hyde said, everybody needs to watch this because it could have been you. It could have been me. It could have been any one of us exercising the First Amendment. You all need to know what our enemies want. They want this for all of us. They want children growing up with dead fathers and raped mothers, all the snark and word games, moral posturing, and linguistic faggotry. This is what lies behind it, bloodlust. And if you don't believe me, just go on social media right now. You'll see people celebrating on TikTok.
I'm not saying she deserved it, but I'm saying God's timing is always right.
You'll see people celebrating on X. You'll see just about everybody celebrating at Blue Sky. MSNBC says, oh, the Trump administration is going to use this as justification for something. Well, yeah, I certainly hope so.
Because as we were just talking about a moment ago with Alan, after one of the Doge employees was allegedly attacked in Washington, D.C., that's what Donald Trump used as justification to send in federal troops into Washington, D.C. to get things under control. The carjacking situation, he used that. And I know it's hard to predict the future, Mark, but you can imagine the administration using this as a justification for something.
I must admit, I'm at a loss to guess as to what happens next.
You know, there's a name that comes to mind right now. It's Jose Calvo Sotelo. He was a conservative just before the Spanish Civil War. He headed like a fringe monarchist party. In and of himself, he wasn't all that important. He didn't have that many political allies. But the left was looking for a body, and the left killed him. And they dumped his body in the street. And everybody on the Spanish right said, you know what? They're coming for all of us. It doesn't matter what our disagreements are. It doesn't matter if you support the king or you support the republic. It doesn't matter if you're a fascist or an anti-fascist. If you're on the right, they see you as an enemy. And they're going to kill you, and they're going to dump your body in the street. The fact is, there are only two sides here. And we're all on the same side, whether we like it or not, whether we like each other or not. Our enemies, in many ways, are more important than our friends. Because it's our enemies who define us. It's our enemies who impose unity on us. And that's the essential point. Charlie Kirk was nothing compared to most of us in terms of ideological extremism, if I want to use that. He went out of his way to play by the rules of the game, and they killed him for it. What do you think they want to do to you? If they didn't spare him, what makes you think they're going to spare you? I'm told that a state representative, this is in Virginia, he said the following: I'm told this is the moment where I'm supposed to express my heartfelt condolences and then stand in solidarity with those on the other side of the aisle as we condemn political violence and stand unified as one people. But we aren't one people, are we? The truth is we haven't been for some time now, and there is no point in pretending anymore, if there ever was. We are two very different people. We may occupy the same piece of geography, but that is where the similarities seem to abruptly end. I convinced myself for a long time that whenever the left called me a racist, a bigot, a sexist, a fascist, a threat to democracy, for even the most innocent of disagreements, that it was simply hyperbolic rhetoric done for effect. And now the effect is a widow and 2 orphan children, because the left couldn't bear the thought of a peaceful man debating them and winning. I don't think they realize it yet, but murdering Charlie is going to be remembered as the day when we finally woke up to what this fight really is. It is not a civil dispute among fellow countrymen. It's a war between diametrically opposed worldviews which cannot peacefully coexist with one another. One side will win, one side will lose. Charlie tried to win that fight through argumentation, through discussion, through peaceful resolution of differences, and the other side murdered him. Not because he was extreme, not because he was inciting violence or any other hyperbolic slur they hurled at him. They murdered him because he was effective, because he was unafraid, because he inspired others and made them feel like he had a voice, that they were not alone. And he did it at the very institutions which have fomented so much hatred toward conservatives. I don't want to stand in solidarity with the other side of the aisle. I want to defeat you. I want to defeat the godless ideology that kills babies in the womb, sterilizes confused children, turns our cities into cesspools of degeneracy and lawlessness, and that murdered Charlie Kirk. Social media is aflame right now with leftist celebration of Charlie's death. I wonder if any among them understand what just happened. If there is a Yamamoto somewhere in their midst warning that all they have done is awoken a sleeping giant, I doubt it. I think they gave up such introspection and self-awareness long ago. I don't know exactly what will happen next. I just know it won't be the same as what has happened in the past. There will be thoughts and prayers. Charlie would have wanted prayers, not for himself, but for those left behind in the country that he loved. But then there will be a reckoning. My Christian faith requires me to love my enemies and pray for those who curse me. It does not require me to stand idly by in the midst of savagery and barbarism, quite the opposite. So every time I feel tired, every time I feel discouraged or overwhelmed, I'm going to watch the video of a good man being murdered in Utah. I will force myself to watch it, and then I will return to the work of destroying the evil ideology responsible for that and so much more. Rest with God, Charlie, your fight is over. Ours is just beginning. You know, what I'm hearing from people all around the country right now, people who I haven't spoken to in years are messaging me. And with this murder in Charlotte and what just happened to Charlie Kirk, a barrier has been crossed. People know the stakes for the very first time. And Charlie Kirk is not somebody we would have necessarily chosen as our champion, as our martyr. But that's precisely why he's effective. Because if they're going to go after him, if they're going to go after the guy who took them up on their own words and tried to have a peaceful debate with them and tried to engage with them in respectful discussion and who never insulted them, who never just put them down, who never just played to the crowd like so many other conservative influencers did, but actually tried to engage with them and they shot him, what exactly is the point of discussion anymore? I don't know about you, but I think the time for debate is over. I don't think there's any common ground to be had. And I think in many ways, this is pushing us to the conclusion that I think Charlie Kirk would have resisted, but his death may unfortunately illustrate that this is a battle of identity, that this is a battle between peoples. And there are some debates where there is no common ground, where there's no compromise possible, because there's no common interest. You know, there are some issues, healthcare, say, you lock us all in a room, you throw a bunch of books at us. Eventually, at some point, we're going to say, yeah, this is the best solution for coming up with the best services to the most people or something like that. But we're not in that kind of a debate. You have one side that says, we want to take your stuff. You're evil. Your culture is evil. Your history is evil. Your identity is evil. We are going to dispossess you. In fact, if you resist that dispossession, that is the very definition of being far right. That is the very definition of being racist, of being Nazi, of being fascist. And so we get to kill you. If you doubt me, go on social media right now and look at how they're treating this. Look at the celebration for the killing in Charlotte. You'll find that too. An innocent white woman stabbed from behind. You have people celebrating that. What exactly are you going to discuss with them? What is there to negotiate? How exactly are these people our fellow Americans? How exactly are these people someone we need to sacrifice for? Someone we need to work with? Someone we share common interests with? It's been a long road getting here, guys. This has been going on for a very long time. And I think one of the biggest things over the last 10 years is with the rise of Donald Trump, we saw a right wing that was actually becoming aware of itself as a force. Not as something that just had to surrender over and over again, but at least had the potential of victory, the potential of taking power and using power, of not being content with a movement that said, our principles say you are not allowed to pursue your interests. Now we have something where we say no. The goal here is to defeat the left. The goal here is to win. The goal here is to take power and use power. The question that we're all still debating, of course, is what is the purpose of that power? What do we want to use it for? Now, my definition, you know what my definition is. My definition is we use that power for the sake of our people. And who do I mean by our people? I mean white people. I mean Americans who are white. Because all Americans in their essence are white. This was founded as a country for white people. But say you disagree with me. Certainly Charlie Kirk did. Say you disagree with me on that. Does that make us enemies? I don't think so. I would love to be in a position where the disagreements on the American right have some impact on my life. Because right now, even though we all fight with each other, even though we all debate with each other, even though a lot of us may not even like each other, none of this particularly matters. There's nobody on the right who's going to put me up against the wall because of an ideological disagreement. I hope we get to the point where I actually do get put up against the wall because of a right-wing ideological disagreement. But none of the people on the right are my enemies because there's nothing they can do to me. It's the people on the left who want to take away my bank account, who want to take away my freedom, who want to take away my property, who want to take away my life, who want to take away my children. And the murder of Charlie Kirk in front of his wife and children should bring that home to you. I want you to take a good look around at the people who are your friends and allies in real life, but also online in this vague constellation we call the movement. And I want you to really think, what is it that these people offer you? Why exactly are we on the same side? It's not because we agree necessarily on the same things. It's not necessarily because we all have the same religious denomination. It's not even necessarily because we want the same candidate in office or we want the same guy to be sitting in Congress. It's because we have the same enemies. That's what's important. Maybe that's a negative view of politics, but I believe the only way you actually get any kind of a real unity is against the common enemy. And the left has defined white people and the civilization that they have created, including those non-whites who identify with that civilization, as their enemy. That clarifies things. That makes it extremely simple for us. And it doesn't matter if you say, well, I'm going to try to approach you halfway. I'll meet you halfway. I'll compromise. I'll say, well, maybe you're right about the Civil Rights Act, or maybe you're right about this issue or that issue. It doesn't matter. They still want to kill you. And how could they not? Think about what the left is in its essence. It's a movement built on the idea of egalitarianism. It's a movement built on the idea of universalism. And that means if there is inequality, the only possible explanation, because they've gotten rid of the idea of biological racial differences, the only possible explanation is discrimination, is oppression, is illegitimate hierarchy. If you really believe that, why wouldn't you kill your enemies? If you really believe that the reason these problems exist are because these evil people set up a system that are holding other people down, why wouldn't you use violence against them? Isn't that just the story of the United States of America since the 1960s? How many campus radicals who committed acts of terrorism in the 1960s and the 1970s are now college professors and the heads of NGOs? How many Christian clergy walked away from their faith but have adopted a new and more powerful faith of leftism that they preach from the pulpit? How many politicians are disingenuously saying they oppose political violence but owe their very careers to a militant and violent ideology and the movement that it supports? There's no going back now. The country is not going to be the same because this 1-2 punch of the murder of an innocent white woman, and then who I would consider to be the most important right-wing activist in the country, bar none. Clearly the one who founded the most important activist organization in front of everyone, in front of his family. You can't say that this is just something that happened. You can't say that this is random. You can't say that this is just the product of chance. This is the culmination of a struggle that's been going on for a very, very long time. And we have to think carefully about how we're going to respond to it. Now, President Trump gave a speech from the Oval Office, and he made a lot of promises about how the radicals who have killed Charlie Kirk and who have done all these other things, including threatening law enforcement and ICE agents and everything else, he's going to go after them. Okay, maybe he will, maybe he won't. Certainly, I have more hope that President Trump's going to do something than any other president in my lifetime. But what happens if he doesn't? And I think this is the thing I really want to bring home to people. A few weeks ago, I had Greg Johnson on here, and he said, look, one party or another, one political faction or another is basically moving to the point where they're going to outlaw the other one. They're going to say it's totally illegitimate. That sounded a bit far-fetched even a couple weeks ago. It doesn't sound so far-fetched now. Because already, and we saw this in the last election, already they tried to put President Trump and all his allies in jail. Not because of anything he did, but because of what he believed, and more importantly, what he represented. And we are nearing a point now where it is very clear that the fundamental promise of democracy, the idea of power sharing, that is no longer a thing. It's just a question of power and will. One group is going to have it, and they're going to use it to subjugate the other group. You may not like that. You may say that's not how the system is supposed to work, but that is how the system works now. And that is how the system is going to work in the future, and it's only going to get worse. If you live in a blue city, you already know. If you end up in a self-defense situation, if you have any kind of a conflict with a protected class, if you have a business that somebody in power doesn't necessarily like, your rights, the laws, how much money you have, none of these things matter because the power and the will is on the other side. Well, now the right wing is going to learn to use power and will. Because if we don't, we are going to lose everything. One of the frustrations I have right now is I don't think many people understand how late the hour really is. There's this joke, certainly for those of us in the conservative movement for a long time. And I say in the conservative movement, even though I've been kind of leading two lives as a white nationalist and then sort of like a mainstream conservative for however many years. So I think I can see both of them. But even in the conservative movement, we used to joke about they always say the next election is the most important election ever. Well, maybe it is now. And maybe it's also going to be right every single time. Because every single time it seems like this is winner take all. When Joe Biden won, he opened the doors to something, depending on which estimates you believe, at least 4 million illegals that came to this country. Probably far more. President Trump, at the current rate of deportations, is going to get rid of about 1 million people. And that includes verified self-deportations. So even with everything that's happening, he probably won't even be able to undo Biden. Which means that if they get back into power again, that's essentially the end of the country because they're just going to open the gates and then that's it. And at that point, it doesn't really matter what happens with national politics. And we have to sort of flee into this realm of wish casting where we talk about things like secession or starting a new country or breaking away and doing God knows what. Do we have the organization for that? Do we have the vision for that? Do we have the will for that? We don't have a single guy in Congress who I would consider to be pro-white. Until we get that, probably a bit premature to start talking about starting our own country, isn't it? And yet we really have no choice but to confront these hard questions. Charlie Kirk is about as moderate an activist as you could possibly had on the American right. And what did it get him? It doesn't matter how you approach these people. It doesn't matter whether you extend your hand. It doesn't matter whether you beat them in a debate, because fundamentally, a debate presupposes a common identity, common interests, common values, not least the value of truth itself. And these things are just gone now. It is not a question of right and wrong. It is a question of us and them. It is a question of who and whom. It is a question of who rules and who will be ruled. And it is no more complicated than that. We will resist that for a long time. We are going to come up with all sorts of explanations. Some people are going to say, oh, it's demons. Oh, it's godlessness. Oh, it's socialism. It's the government. It's rootlessness. It's whatever else. No. Fundamentally, there are two sides. And you have to pick your side. And if you don't pick your side, it's going to be chosen for you. And you're going to meet the fate of everybody else, whether you like it or not. I was surprised, frankly. I mean, I never met the man. Certainly, I know plenty of people who knew him quite well. But I was surprised at how sad I was. Not just sad in the sense of, oh, a fellow human being has been killed. Not just sad in the sense of a political ally, or at least somebody who I considered to be broadly on my side had been killed, but like actually feeling it as a personal cost. And I was also surprised at how many other people who never knew this guy, who were never in TPUSA, also felt the same way. And I think it's because, not just because we all kind of knew he was a good guy and nobody had a bad thing to say about him ever, but because we all sort of knew that shot was meant for us, don't we? When Charlie Kirk, we've all seen the video, right? We've all seen the more graphic video where he took it in the neck. And that is going to be replayed on social media forever. They are going to use that to taunt you. That is always going to be there. And I think we all also know that if President Trump had that bullet go a little bit over and his head had been blown apart on live television, they'd be using that to taunt us forever. That's what they want to do to every single one of us. What are you going to do about that? And let's not forget, there's been plenty of other people they've gone after. They tried to kill Nick Fuentes not long ago. A few months ago, somebody came to his house, tried to kill him. Actually ended up in a shooting and shot some other person's dogs. They had a trainee shoot up a Catholic school not long ago. There was another one who shot up another school before that, about a year or two ago. This is something, and then, let's not forget, we had a radicalized left-wing boomer shoot up the Republican caucus in Congress at a baseball game, including shooting Steve Scalise. You would think that it's a pretty big deal when someone tries to mass assassinate every single Republican in Congress. It barely made the news for like 2 days. People don't even remember it now. But this is the atmosphere of constant intimidation that we all live under. And even though people say, oh, Trump won, you don't have to put up with this stuff anymore, that's not true at all. How many of you guys post on X under a fake name? How many of you guys keep your political opinions secret, not just from your job, not just from your employer, maybe not just from your teachers, but also from some of your friends, maybe even from your wife, because you don't know who you can trust. Certainly, I paid the price for that. When I was doxxed, it came from a totally unexpected direction. Not even the kind of thing you can prepare against. But every single one of us lives under the gun. Every single one of us understands in some way that this system is rigged against us. How much longer are we going to live this way? And you can say, well, just be bold, work under your own name, charge forward, do whatever it takes. Fine. But then you need money. And then you need to take care of your family. And then all of a sudden you go down in status because you don't have those things and people don't take your opinions as seriously. the hard reality of status competition, the hard reality of economics, the hard reality of understanding that you are in a power dynamic and you have to compete for power, whether you like it or not. These are the things that strip away at a man's integrity and political principles. The solution is always power. The way politics works is you don't just come up with the perfect ideology, raise a flag, and then everybody rallies to you. It is a long, subtle, bitter, compromising struggle that is going to go on for the rest of our lives and probably beyond that. But we have to fight it because we are now at a point where it's not just Western civilization is changing or we're at the end of a cycle. The whole thing is really coming to an end. What I'm saying to you is that everybody may think, or may even want to think, that the end is coming in their lifetime because there's like a certain self-importance with that. But I think it really is coming for us because in every single Western country, white people are soon going to be a minority. And even if you don't think race is all that important as like a first principle or something, you need to understand that all the things you claim to value, if you're on the right, whether it's Christianity, whether it's free markets, whether it's certain values, whether it's certain institutions, all those things go away when white majorities go away. You're in this, whether you like it or not. And there is no other choice other than win or die. White identity or white extinction. That's it. I wish there was, in many ways, a more moderate path. I wish that Charlie Kirk was in some ways right. I mean, again, I've spent most of my life working in two movements at once. Basically, radical, revolutionary white nationalism. 15, 20 years ago, I was writing some of the most extreme stuff you could possibly find. And at the same time, I'm working for like Republican congressmen and doing stuff on the Hill and talking about free markets and God knows what else. And sometimes it's a little weird working in both those worlds at once. But sometimes, if I'm honest with myself, I wish it was the easier way, the conservative way, the way within the system where you go to the cocktail parties and have nice discussions with people about policy and you think that it's important. But none of that matters, really. That world is not the real world. It's a fantasy because things are not just going to go on as they have. Permanence is the illusion of every single age. And if the events of the last week have brought nothing else home, it's that things really are about to change. Chud Jack is wrong. There actually is going to be a happening. Something is actually happening. What is that going to look like? Well, I don't think it's going to be something like the Spanish Civil War or anything like that, at least not off the bat. But it might be something like the Years of Lead, which was something that happened in Italy in the 1970s, where basically you had the far left and the far right taking shots at each other all the time. I mean, certainly you've seen the way left celebrates assassinations lately. You've seen the radical change in their politics just over the last few years. Even a guy like Chuck Schumer, who's like an absolute enemy of everything that America stands for, we're going to look back on him as basically a moderate compared to what's coming next. And again, we all say Trump is just the stepping stone. Trump is not going to save us, but he buys us time, right? That's the line. He buys us time. Well, time for what? What happens after Trump? Who replaces him? Can anyone replace him? Is Donald Trump the guy who is holding us back, or is he single-handedly propping this thing up? Are we going to look back on this time right now as the golden age, not because things are so great, but because things are about to get so bad? Well, the answer is that it's up to us. We have to get serious right now because they are coming for us. They are coming for all of us. And the reaction on social media, not just random people getting 100,000 likes on laughing at Charlie Kirk or taunting his wife on her social media, which is happening right now, by the way, or people in other countries laughing at Charlie Kirk, or people spreading the videos of him being assassinated or mocking his kids, all of these things that are happening right now, and all of these things that they would be very happy to do to you, all of these things that are happening right now, that's not even what's important. It's the fact that the politicians and the people in power are not even backing down. This happened. What is their first instinct? How can we disarm you? How can we get your guns? Republican says, can we have a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk? They scream on the floor of the House and they say no. They're not even willing to give him a moment of silence. This is a guy who did nothing but want to talk to them. And they can't even honor him with that. What's it going to take, people? What do you think they're willing to do to you if they're going to do that to Charlie Kirk? If they're going to celebrate what happened in Charlotte? And I promise you, this is not going to be the last one. I'm not interested in rhetorical excesses right now. I'm not interested in speeches. I'm not interested in argumentation. I'm not interested in debate. The time for debate is over. What I'm interested in is organization. What I'm interested in is practical realities. What I'm interested in is community building in the real world, tribe building in the real world, friends banding together, spears outward to make sure that the world can't come after us, because that is the age we're living in. It is no longer the case that we live in a high-trust society where the laws will protect you, where you can count on the police and you can count on the judges, where you can count on a basic sense of civic virtue and patriotism among your fellow citizens. You are not in that world anymore. You are in a world of warring tribes. Occasionally, they euphemistically disguise it as our communities, which is a very sinister phrase when you think about it, because it presupposes that we're not actually one people anymore. Just a bunch of different warring tribes over resources. Well, who's your tribe? If you're a white American, or even if you're not white, but you consider yourself an American and that is your primary identity, who's your tribe? What groups identify with you? What groups fight for you? What groups are making sure that you get your collective interests represented in the government, in businesses? Probably nobody. We can't operate like this anymore. The time for debate is over. The time for individualism is over. The time for high-minded abstractions is over. The time has come for organization with one goal, and that is to secure power. That is to secure power for ourselves and our posterity. We have spent the last half century begging the left just to compromise with us, just to listen with us, just to have a peaceful discussion with us. I can't tell you how many times when I was organizing college campuses, I would go to our guys and say, if you had unlimited money and unlimited resources, what would you do? And you know what our guys would say? I'd start a newspaper. I'd host a debate. They can't break out of the idea that there's a common interest to be found or that all issues can't be solved via peaceful discussion. Well, nobody can pretend that anymore. We're at the point now where it really is existential. We're at the point now where this conflict will only have one winner and one loser. And I don't know about you, but I want to be the winner. I want to die in a country of my own. I'm like 42 years old. I have never known what it's like to really have a country. And if you're younger than me, you damn sure haven't known what that's like. You have spent your entire life in occupied territory. You have spent your entire life in a world where the villains won, and you probably didn't even realize it until very recently. Maybe you didn't even realize it until today. But that's the reality. What are you going to do about it? And you can't say that the answer is nothing, or the answer is I'm going to avoid trouble, or that I'm going to be nice, or that I'm going to be moderate. Because if they're killing the moderates in the streets, in front of their families, what's the point of being a moderate? What's the point of democracy when the come debate me guy is gunned down on a college campus? And as of this recording, as of this stream, as far as I know, the killer is still at large. What are you going to do about that? I encourage every single one of you. I don't care whether you agree with me on every little thing. I don't care if you know who I am or any of that. I don't care if you follow me on Twitter. I don't matter. I'm just some guy. What matters is what you do next. You need to think long and hard about the brutal reality that if things continue as they are going, the world you are going to live in and your kids are going to live in is going to be poorer, more brutal, more violent, more racially divided. And if you don't have allies in that world, if you don't have a tribe, if you don't have a network, if you don't have an organization at your back, and eventually, if you don't have a state that you can call your own, you are going to be cut down. And it may not be as brutal as it was to Charlie Kirk, but how many people in this country now, especially among Gen Z, have just been psychologically gelded from the moment they were born, told to be ashamed of themselves, no future, no expectations, no romance, no adventure, no nothing. That's the world that's being created for us. It's essentially just a prison. In some ways, it's worse than a prison. At least in a prison, you can fight. You don't even get that chance here. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? It's a much broader topic. What the goal is. What is it that you want? Because that depends on your God, on your beliefs, on your friends, on where you are in life. I can't answer those questions. Only you can really answer those questions. But what I can tell you is this. The answer is not going to be found by trying to discuss a hypothetical common interest with the people who want you dead. The solution is always power. And that's what you need to be thinking about right now. Thank you for joining me, guys. Catch you next time.